Nice. Woohoo.
You got Tom
Yeah.
on.
All right. Yeah, how's everybody? Hey, Doug, how you doing? Megan,
Great.
awesome. Well, cool. So, hey, woohoo. Randy, what's happening? We've got the dream team over in Hawaii, and I'm going to turn it over to Russ Collio. Russ, what's happening? Let's rock and roll with what's happening with the REOs distressed market today.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome from beautiful Maui, Hawaii, here with Randy Bird.
Woohoo!
You guys rock. I can't wait to hear this.
You guys all need to be here next year, anybody who's not here. So this is awesome. Gene closed out the show yesterday. We're gonna have some more amazing sessions today, but greetings from Hawaii.
I know.
Mahalo.
Take it over, buddy. Mahalo.
Aloha, mahalo.
All right.
Where's
Let's
your
get
grass
started.
skirt? We want to see Randy's grass skirt.
Randy's gone. Hey, everybody, welcome. I'm going to run through today for you as best I can how to create win-win situations on distressed properties, and then how to capture REO listings. This was one of the most highly reviewed sessions from an icon perspective, if you've ever taken any classes in the Icon Lounge. So what I did is I modified it a bit to include distressed properties, REOs. Doesn't matter what state you're in, this should be applicable, as there's only two different types of foreclosures in the United States, judicial and non-judicial. Some of them have the right of redemption period, some of them don't, but all of the basics are very similar. The foreclosure process is an outstanding opportunity for you to use your real estate license and your real estate expertise to actually help folks that are in distress. And sometimes when they can't be helped or they've already left the property, I'm also going to review the easiest and best way to obtain REO listings. So I'll do just a quick welcome. I'll do a distressed overview, and we'll walk through both the foreclosure process and how to obtain REO listings. We will have a section for Q&A, and we are not going to do a survey today. That would be a bad idea. So let's get rolling. Just a quick intro. I'm Russell. I'm from Northern California, a little town called Loomis. Not too far from your main man there, Tom Daves. We're about 2 towns apart up Highway 80 on the way to Reno. I've been 30 months with EXP, about to Icon, my 3rd time here this month. I'm also the founder of USAHomebids.com, True North Alliance referral program, and I'm an REO specialist. That's where the majority of my business come from. When I'm not doing real estate or running around chasing my kids in softball or some other sport, I'm doing hunting and fishing. So here we go. Let's do a quick overview. We're going to talk about REOs, BPOs, and foreclosures. I'm also going to give you what I call my quick start guide. So if you're taking notes, great. If not, I'm going to try to copy and paste into the chat box what you can then hopefully copy and paste into a Word doc or something. Or if Megan or Tom or somebody smarter than me can capture emails, I'll send them my quick start guide to make it easier. Everybody can hear me okay? We're good? Keep rolling. Thought I would keep Maui behind me so you guys could get inspired. All right, so we'll talk about the key platforms, and there's a bunch of those for REOs. I'll talk about the pros and the cons of both foreclosure properties and REOs. And then I'll talk about the different foreclosure stages in the entire United States. And there's different processes in each state. You want to become an expert in your state, I'll go over the state of California. However, I will let you know it's very, very similar in each of the states. The next steps, I'm going to talk about memberships on the different type of distressed property platforms, data sources where you can actually acquire the distressed property, and then, of course, the secret sauce. It's relationships research, which equals results. And we'll talk about how that works and how you accumulate asset managers to get REO listings in the future. So let's jump into REO key platforms. If you've ever wanted to be an REO agent, I would say that EXP, and if you're not with EXP, most brokerages are very friendly. They want this business, and this business has started to pick up significantly. I probably have in the month of February approximately 10 listings coming that are REO listings. So if people have told you they've slowed down, probably absolutely true over the last couple of years, but you're going to see a lot of USA Home Bids REO listings coming up next month of February. Those of you in Sacramento, I have $3 million plus properties coming in on the river. and I have 6 or 7 coming in Oak Park, so be prepared for those. I have one that we're listing this Thursday in downtown Sacramento. It's a duplex. It's a fixer with lots of land, so anybody that you know that's interested in those are all coming. Some of the key platforms: Equator, that's equator.com. Pyramid, and equator.com is, all things REO. You can actually create a profile. You can take classes, you can get certified. Equator is fantastic. And these are the basics. There's a million of them. By the way, it took me about 10 months to accumulate all of this stuff and then figure out what is good and what isn't good. So I'm saving you a ton of research. The next one is Pyramid Platform. You're going to want to be a member of each of these for sure. And there's some other ones out there like res.net, but Lighthouse Real Estate Solutions, www.olres.net, Acceleris. So why I'm telling you these is once I teach you how to find REO properties and you start to locate asset managers, the very first question they're going to ask you is, hey, okay, we use Pyramid Platform. Are you on it? Or, hey, we use res.net. By the way, for some reason, I don't have res.net on here. So make sure you type in res.net if you're taking notes, res.net. That's another one they're going to ask you. Are you on res.net? Are you on Acceleris? Are you on Equator? So you're going to want to be able to say yes. Most of them are free. Some of them, there's a very small fee. I think res.net and Equator, there's a small fee, but they're both definitely worth it if you're going to get into this. Also, if you want to pay a couple or pay for this stuff with a income stream, I'm starting to see BPOs pick up a ton. I got BPOs all week requests. I don't do BPOs anymore. However, I highly suggest that you do them if you're new. You're probably saying, what the heck is a BPO? A BPO is a broker's price opinion. It is very much like an appraisal, but I would call it a poor man's appraisal or, poor person's appraisal. It's just a evaluation by you of the value of a property. And what I would tell you is when you get a BPO request from one of these platforms, and if you sign up with the 4 that I have on here right now, reonetwork.com, usres.com, sidusamc.com, and then Valigent, I'm telling you, you're going to get BPO requests. There's a bunch more. If you're really interested in doing BPOs, a lot of people do 10 plus BPOs a day. Let me know and I'll get you an exhaustive list of all the ones that have been asking me for BPOs lately. A couple things that I'll tell you. Number one, you want to do a complete job, fill out everything completely. They're usually anywhere between 3 and 5 pages long. They're going to ask you for 3 active properties, 3 sold properties, and then they're going to ask you for your opinion of the price as the property sits today. If they were going to try to sell it quickly, what suggested repairs you think that they should do, and then if they do those repairs, what type of price they will actually get for the property after repairs. And that's kind of a brief overview of what BPOs are. I can send folks samples of BPOs if you want to see one. I don't think it's all that relevant, but again, make sure you do an excellent job of filling out every single section of the BPO, or as soon as you submit it, they're going to kick it back to you and they're going to say, hey, you left out, these 3 or 4 sections. Moreover, the more complete job that you do, the more chances there are that you're going to get more of them. Some of them pay as little as $10. Some of them pay as much as 300. Depends on how much they need it and what location it's in. The other thing I'll tell you about BPOs is you want to be careful. You're not supposed to approach those people to list their properties. Now, you can get around that. You're definitely able to send a group of letters in that area to folks saying that you're interested in purchasing properties. And it may just be that these folks are in a situation where they need to sell. They order BPOs for 2 reasons. Number one, there's a problem, right? They started missing their mortgage payments and the asset manager wants to understand, hey, this house that we loaned on, are we in trouble or are we well protected? If the house is worth $400,000 and their loan is $250,000, they know they're well protected. And so they feel very safe. It could be that it was, over leveraged where the house is worth, $300,000 and they have a $350,000 loan. They want to know that also. So it's very important that you're accurate with the BPO. The second reason that people order BPOs or managers order BPOs is they're selling a portfolio of loans and they want to understand what the asset to debt ratio is in that package. That's the other reason. And again, anywhere I've seen as low as $10 for an exterior BPO, all the way up to $300 for an exterior BPO, depending on how much they need it. And I would say the average is around $50. All right, the foreclosure stages. Now I'm going to go over the foreclosure stages in the state of California. What I will tell you is no matter what state you're in, the foreclosure stages are very similar in every state. and they all go through the same exact process. And again, you can go and look in your state. NOLO, N-O-L-O, will have a very good explanation of the foreclosure process in your state, but it's going to be very similar. The only differences being if they're judicial, non-judicial, and if there's a right of redemption period or not. In the state of California, we used to have 0 right of redemption period, and there's still 0 right of redemption period, but we have AB 1527 and SB 1079 that have kind of thrown a monkey into the wrench for investors. I'll get to that in just a second. So what happens post 2008, right, when we had all of the crazy predatory lending and organic loan products, is that a person gets significantly behind on their loan, and the bank files what's called a notice of default. Essentially, it's a recorded document at the county saying, hey, this person is behind on their mortgage. I will tell you that is an excellent time to approach a homeowner to help them with their current situation. There's a number of things that they can do when they first receive that notice of default. And in the state of California, that's a 90-day period. So once they receive the NOD, they have 90 days to do something. Now that should be motivation, right? It's motivation for some folks. It's not motivation for others for some reason. I don't know why, but if they have the NOD stage, they have 90 days to do something. The bank will also offer them a new loan, right, of a modification or a forbearance, where they can push all of the money that they owe to the back of the loan, or they can say, hey, this is what we think that you could afford based upon what you've told us, and we'll modify your loan. If they do either of those two, it usually takes them out of the notice of default stage. Now, in every state, they have something similar to what's called a release, right? The notice of default stays active until the bank has filed a release, which says, hey, these people are no longer in default. Until they have done that, the notice of default is still active, which means they're allowed to file what's called a notice of trustee sale. NOS is what they call it in the business. If they file a notice of trustee sale, that happens on the 91st days. Remember, I said the notice of default stage is 90 days. On the 91st day, if they file the notice of default, they have 21 days left. That's it, 21 days before their house is sold at the courthouse steps at an auction. If you don't think they were motivated in the NOD stage, the notice of trustee sale stage, they are super motivated. I've had a number of folks that I went and knocked on doors with that are on this call right now, where when you knock on the door and they're in the NOS stage, man, they are more than willing to talk to you. Now you're going to get the door slammed in your face and called a bunch of different names, but if you come from a place of service, most often you can help these folks. I remember this last year I had Ryan on my team, and we went out knocking about a week before Easter, and we actually saved these people's house for them. They are going to use Ryan, right, if they ever sell their house, but luckily we were able to restructure the loan and keep them in the house. Again, we came from a place of service. Now, if they've stuck their head in the sand, or they've moved out of country or whatever, and they went through the NOD stage, which is 90 periods, and they went through the notice of trustee sale stage, which is 21 days, that whole 111-day process, and the property is not bought by a third party at the courthouse steps, it then goes back to the bank, and it's becomes what's called an REO property, right? Real estate owned, it's property that's owned by the bank. Now, you can also have that property bought by a third party investor at the courthouse steps. And at that point, it becomes the property of that third party investor. However, in the state of California and different states, there's different things that can throw a monkey into that wrench. Back in 2021, I believe it's 2021, Governor Newsom instituted SB 1079 that says that any property that's sold at the courthouse steps, that's a single family residence or up to 4 units, can be taken, number one, by the tenant. If the tenant lives there and they qualify, they can take that property. Number two, by any nonprofit corporation whose purpose is to provide housing. Or number three, by a potential owner of the property that's going to live there, right? So you would have to fill out an affidavit that says you're one of those three, and you're able to take that property away from the bank or the investor if you qualify in one of those 3 categories. Now, they've definitely
love California. We love gruesome Newsom. Woohoo!
No doubt about it. Not only that, they changed the law significantly this last year with AB 1527, I believe. And so they've really limited what nonprofits can do because a lot of people were taking advantage of this rule. Not only that, there's a lawsuit against a guy that has claimed over the last 2 years that he is going to live personally in 13 different properties for a year as his primary residence. No way you can live in 13 different properties as your primary residence. So he has definitely lied on his affidavits, and the district attorney is currently after him. In any event, that's the basic process in the state of California. It is similar in every state. The only difference being some states have what's called a right of redemption period, where, and then we have different parts of foreclosure, such as homeowners associations that also have a right of redemption period. What that means is once the property has gone to the trustee sale, if it's a bank foreclosure where it's a loan on the property in the state of California, there is no right of redemption. The only thing you have to worry about is SB 1079 and all the laws that came after it, which is essentially a 45-day period. You have 15 days to identify the property that you want to purchase as a nonprofit, as a tenant, or as a owner occupant. And then after the 15 days, you have 30 days to come up with the cash. So there's a 45-day waiting period. If you're a investor or a bank that has taken back a property and somebody institutes what's called an NOI, a notice of intent to bid. In other states, if you foreclose upon a property, there are some states that allow that owner to redeem the property for what was paid plus interest. So if somebody took the property back for $300,000 a bank and you fell within that right of redemption period, the owner does have the right to actually buy that property back as long as they pay all $300,000 plus interest. Once the right of redemption period is over, then it becomes an REO property. There's opportunity all along the way. During the notice of default stage, if you come from a place of service, I have listed a number of properties that are in the NOD stage. Matter of fact, I got a wonderful email yesterday from a lady that I talked to and helped about 2 years ago that says, hey, are you still in real estate? You helped us when we were in NOD stage. I'd like to list my home. I always knew I was going to, and I always knew I was going to list it with you if I did. She's over on Kenneth and Fair Oaks, which is a super cool email to receive. There is lots of opportunity in the NOD stage. Like I said, I've helped a ton of people there, and I've sold a number of properties in default. Notice of trustee sale stage, this is when they are most motivated. So I highly recommend that you go and knock on those doors in the notice of trustee sale stage. That is the most motivated thing in the whole world. When a notice gets posted on your front door that says your house is going to be sold in auction in 21 days, if you're not motivated then, I don't know when you're motivated. And then lastly, of course, real estate owned. Banks don't keep properties, right? That's not what they're in the business of doing. They're in the business of making loans. So they are going to list that property. And we're going to get into how to list those properties here very, very shortly. I think it might be the next slide. Oh, just kidding. Two major associations, if you want to get into REO properties, I highly recommend the first one, reomac.org. It's the National Association of Default Professionals. It just used to be called REOMAC. We changed our names last year. I sit on the membership board for NADP. If you want to get into NADP, just put me as the referring member. If I see your name on our approval list, I will make sure that you get approved, but please reach out to me so I know that you're going to be there. So it's the National Association of Default Professionals. Also, we have a great national conference coming in Las Vegas. I think it's in March or April. You can look it up on our platform. I'm going to be there. You should definitely be there. The other one that's a little more difficult to be in or get into is the NRBA. But what I suggest is if you're just getting started and you want to become a part of REO business or the foreclosure business or distressed property business, join the NADP. It's not very expensive, has great education, and you cannot miss our national conference in Vegas. You have to come. That's where you rub elbows with other REO brokers. You're going to get the best information and you're going to get the best education. Once you've done a handful of foreclosure properties and REOs, then you have an opportunity to apply to and get into the NRBA. But these are the two big associations in the United States where all of the REO folks rub elbows. All right, data sources. I always give you two because I don't want you to think that I'm making any money or getting anything from either of them. I know a lot of you already have Property Radar or have seen Property Radar before. Property Radar, in my opinion, is the best source out there. There is Property Shark also, but Property Radar, from what I have seen, does the very best job of telling you what auctions are coming up and what county you're in. It'll tell you notice of default stage, notice of trustee sales stage, or the equivalent in whatever state that you're in. It also gives you information on properties that have been foreclosed upon that are currently REO. So these two sources are by far the best sources to find distressed and REO properties. Now, that's not where it ends because you need a really good relationship with your title company also. So I'm going to walk you through the super easy, however, not so simple way to obtain your very first REO listing. So like I said just a moment ago, you want to partner with your local title company. Your local title company is going to be your best friend. You also want to get to know asset managers through platforms and memberships. I just told you the 2 places that you want to become a member of, and then all of the platforms that you need to be on, right? So you've already got all that stuff. And again, I'm going to copy and paste my quick start guide into the chat box here in a few minutes before I take questions. But these are 2 keys. Now, the title company is the biggest key because they are going to pull the documents that you ask them to pull after you have done research on either Property Radar, Property Shark, or some other platform. You need to understand the foreclosure process in your state. I just gave you a crash course, and there's way more to it in the state of California, but in the state of California, it's notice of default stage, 90 days, notice of trustee sale stage, 21 days. Then if nothing happens and no third party buys it at the courthouse steps, it becomes an REO where there's a 15-day waiting period. If no one has given an NOI, a notice of intent to bid, through those 3 different categories that I talked about, then it actually goes back to the bank, and the bank has the ability to sell that property, and you have the ability to list that property. The other thing is, if you're an investor, these are great opportunities for you to buy a property at a fair price, get somebody out of trouble, and have the ability to flip that property. We will also show you how to regularly search for bank-owned properties in your area. A lot of folks that go after REOs, in my opinion, go the wrong route again, trying to get them, right? So they'll go to like Bank of America or Wells Fargo or Chase Bank. Well, it could be in the area that you're in, Wells Fargo, Chase Bank, B of A, they didn't make any loans in your entire county. And then you have this great relationship with this asset manager that you've worked a year on that has 0 assets in your area for sale. So it was a waste of time. I'm going to show you how to laser focus your search to just the properties that are going to be for sale in your area. We're going to show you right here on the bottom how to reverse engineer trustees' deeds or the equivalent in the state that you're in to find these asset managers and to actually get these listings. Just to show you how it works, the listing that I have starting tomorrow at 1421 T Street, this is exactly how I found it. I reverse engineered a trustee's deed, located the current asset manager on the property, and we have the listing going live tomorrow. You can list on my platform, usahomebids.com. I think you get the most money there. You can list it traditional way. It doesn't matter. Banks need to sell these properties. They're not going to keep this asset. All right, so here is how it works. Once you have researched the property on Property Radar or Property Shark, you take that property information and you tell your title company, hey, I need the trustee's deed upon sale, or the sheriff's deed, or whatever state you're in, what the deed is called when it is recorded after the property is foreclosed upon. In the state of California, it's called a trustee's deed upon sale, which you can see right in the middle of that document, trustee's deed upon sale. Here's the beauty. It tells you who the heck is the owner of the property, because once the deed is recorded, they ask you to mail it to them. So if you see in the upper left-hand side of the document that I have screenshot there, in the yellow box with the big arrow that's pointing to it, when recorded, mail to. So in this case, I've obviously put John Smith in there, 123 Main Street, town ST 12345. So you are going to research John Smith at 123 Main Street, and that is the person that is now controlling this asset. You're going to track down a phone number. You're going to say, hey, I would like to talk to your asset manager. You guys just took back this property in Sacramento County. I would love to list it for you. And what I tell people is, here is what you say when you make a call to an asset manager. You don't just say, hey, I am Russell Enyart. I'm a real estate broker in Northern California. I handle REOs. Do you have any assets, right? What I call and say is, hey, my name is Russell Enyart. I'm an REO broker in Northern California. I have a free BPO ready to send over to your asset manager on 6384 Chestnut Drive in Citrus Heights, California. You took it back last Thursday, the 18th. I know your asset manager is looking to see if you guys are safe in that property, and I have this BPO ready to go. Can I please have a contact phone number and email so I can send it over and make sure they got it? Add value. If you're adding value, the chances of you actually getting through to the asset manager is better. If you pull all of the trustees' deeds for all of the foreclosures in the counties that you're working, and you only work on the ones that are recorded, the chances of you actually getting a listing are much, much better because you are laser focused on only what's available in your area. And what you're going to notice is that some banks focus more in some areas than others. So the opportunity for you to get listings from a certain bank is going to go up because you're focused on the ones that have assets in your area. All right, that was way faster than I thought it was going to be. I don't know how much time I have, but what I'm going to do is I know there's going to be a lot of questions. So I'm going to copy and paste my quick start guide into the chat box, and then I will answer any questions that you guys have. Oh, I actually took quite a few minutes. What do you got? Questions?
So Russell, I'll ask a question. So back in 2008, 9, and 10, I had done a lot of REO properties back then, got out of it, as the market improved, that we just didn't have very many around here. I do see that kind of upticking a little bit. So this is going to sound maybe like a little bit of a silly question. Back in 2008, 9, and 10, it used to be where I'd get a call from an asset manager. They would say, we need you to do a BPO for us. If you do the BPO, we can award you the listing if we list it. Do you still see that process happening, or is it just kind of hit or miss? Or
Yes, so both. I would say hit or miss and that process happening. So I just had Gregory Funding called me on a really nice listing up in Newcastle. And that's exactly what they said. They said, hey, listen, would you do this BPO for us? We have this asset available. We don't have an asset manager in there. We found you on equator.com. Is that an area that you handled? And it was actually relatively close to my house. I said, absolutely. So I did the BPO and got the listing. I would say that that's not the norm. I get that call maybe 2 times a year. What is the norm is the process that I just told you, where I figure out who has the asset. I track down, either the asset manager or a good contact in that area, and I just hound the living daylights out of them. And I'll tell you what I do, and actually I'll share it with you right now, just so you can see I put my money where my mouth is I have an Excel spreadsheet that I work on each day, and I'm going to share my screen. And so I've tracked down every trustee's deed in 3 counties. And let's see, where is it at? Right here. So I think you guys can see it. So this is like all of the trustees' deeds in El Dorado County. So I track down all the ones in El Dorado County. I have a spreadsheet set up. I call on all of them each day, and eventually I track down an asset manager. Now here's the key. Remember, I told you it's important to go to those conferences. So like if I click on this link right here, so this will bring up the trustees' deed for that area. The computer's going a little slow. So I have them all in Excel spreadsheet. I have Placer, El Dorado, Yolo, and Sacramento counties. I work those 4 counties.
And Russell, this spreadsheet that you have, this is what you're working with your title officer on to pull these. How often are you doing that? Once a week, once a month?
Once a week. I have them pull them once a week. And
Okay.
then this is the trustees' deed. So like on this one, I'm looking for Deutsche, right? Select Portfolio Servicing. This is who I'm going after on this one in El Dorado County. And I do this every single week. And then here's the beauty is when I have like 5 or 6 or 7, right? All the same bank, and I've come to a dead end. For some reason, I haven't been able to track down the asset manager on that property. Then I go to that conference in Vegas, right? And I meet somebody from Philadelphia and I say, hey, do you know somebody from Ocwen Bank? Well, they don't care. They're not going to get a listing in Northern California, right? And they're like, oh yeah, no, I work with the asset managers over there all the time. I say, fantastic. Would you mind sharing that information with me? And I'll share back on anybody that you're having trouble, finding in your area. I do a lot of research and I can track stuff down. I have 5 current properties available from Ocwen Bank in Sacramento area, but no asset manager that I've been able to track down. I keep running into dead ends, and then they'll share that information with you, right? So that is, I think, the most important thing is keep a tally. You're going to go run into dead ends. Sometimes I've run into dead end like 4 times in a row. And finally, like some kind of research that I do on Google or LinkedIn or Facebook, I stalk these people, I eventually find something, I eventually get through and I end up getting listings. And like I said, February is great. It's going to be the hottest month that I've had on REOs. Actually, since I started, I probably have 10 coming in February.
So last question is, I see you targeting like the bigger sites like Equator and some of these bigger banks and things like that. Do you ever target local credit unions or things like that may not be on sites like Equator?
Yeah, I've tried, Andrea, and like Golden One has a number of REO properties, and I even know the assistant to the CEO. I have not cracked golden one yet in Sacramento. There have been a number of them, probably 8 or 10 over the last 3 years, and I still haven't, obtained one of those listings. But yeah, you can, by the way, the quick start guide that I've given you guys, everyone on here that's with EXP. I know I'm creating my own competition, but you can become HUD certified. It's a company called Smart. You guys can do HUD listings. If you haven't ever done Xome, XOME, they're pretty restrictive. Sacramento's booked. There's like me and Paul Boudier and a couple other guys that are already here. So you're probably toast on Sacramento. But if you're outside of Sacramento, Xome is a really good option. American Destiny Real Estate. So what happens is after you start tracking these guys down, then you start getting listings all over the place, right? So I have a listing right now in Oregon that I'm sharing with one of the EXP agents in Oregon. I have 4 listings coming in Georgia that I'm listing with a friend of mine that's EXP agent in Georgia. And these are all from banks that I have personal relationships with now, which I get referrals on, right? So I do 50-50 referrals on my bank properties and they still remain my client, as opposed to the client in the state that we're working with. I'm doing a couple $1 million properties down in the Bay Area because they've used me in Sacramento. I searched down a property on Fair Oaks Boulevard. The bank loved me so much. They're like, hey, will you work the Bay? So now I'm part of Bay Area. I'm doing the Bay Area because all the properties in the Bay are $1 million plus.
Yeah. Russell, thank you so much. This is great stuff. And I know we've talked about it before and interesting to evolve. My quick question about just in the market, because you always hear it, is it 2008 or not? People are saying there's obviously a lot more equity in properties, and obviously tightening market means increasing, foreclosure. Worsening economic is increasing foreclosures. How does this new model where there's a lot of equity in properties change the dynamic on this foreclosure market? And do you see it very different?
Yeah, so it's not 2008. I was buying foreclosures back then, but I wasn't a full-time real estate agent. So there is significant equity. However, the last 2 to 3 years, if they've bought the property the last 2-3 years, there is no equity in those either. So we're seeing short sales now also. And what I'm seeing is for the past 48 months ish, up until about 6 months ago, is anything that had a penny of equity was being bought at the courthouse steps by a third party because they were betting on the property continuing to increase in value. So if there was 50 grand in equity, normally you don't buy that at the courthouse steps. But for the last 4 years, if you bought it with 50,000 in equity, by the time you sold it, it had 100,000 in equity, right? Because the property values continue to go up. Those properties are not selling at the courthouse steps to third parties anymore. So they're going back to the banks. So the banks are now having inventory, in their system to list with us.
I have a quick question. We obviously, I'm Tom's sales manager, so we managed assets for all kinds of Fannie, Freddie, HUD, all of it. But I heard that the way that they were going to manage the assets would be different. Are you finding that, since it sounds like you have a pretty decent portfolio? Like I heard that they were going to try to keep people in the homes longer. Is that true? And not cash for keys so quickly so that they weren't vacant so long, stuff like that? Or are you seeing them manage the exact same kind of?
So what I'm seeing different is trying to keep them in a loan prior to foreclosing. Once they foreclose, they want them out as quickly as possible, and cash for keys is still a thing.
Okay.
Once they foreclose.
Yeah, and the assets are being managed, it seems like the same then.
Exactly the same once they foreclose.
Okay.
Yeah, other than the new laws.
Right. Okay. Yeah, interesting. Very interesting. But it sounds like you've been extremely proactive in getting to them before it's even the foreclosure date.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so the HUD, by the way, there's a couple questions in the chat box I see coming across. The HUD program is called SMART, SMART. Again, relatively difficult to get into, but it's out there. And if you're EXP, you're going to need our E&O insurance and our general liability insurance with any of the REO platforms that you sign up with. And then the other one is ADR, American Destiny Real Estate, although they have not had a lot of inventory here lately. But there's a bunch out there that are like that.
So we're finding we have our first few short sales that we're working right now, and it feels a lot like it did in the beginning last time, where the loss mitigation departments aren't really set up and equipped for us yet. What do you think about that?
I have not done a bunch of short sales yet, so I don't know the answer to that question. One of the guys on my team is doing one, and the bank was very receptive. And it feels like they had their education from 2008. So one of my guys is having no problem with the seconds and thirds and offering
Yeah.
pennies on the dollar, and they're the first understands what's happening.
Okay, obviously, we're fortunate to have Kelvin with EXP. He was our Fannie Mae asset manager back in 08. But so I just reached out to him and he found me several contacts to try to connect with at Shell Point, but it definitely hasn't been easy.
No, yeah, Shell Point's got a bunch of stuff in Sacramento.
Yeah.
And then Warren gets a lot of the Fannie Mae stuff.
Hey, Russell, are the asset managers still requiring you to carry the funds on expenses on the home and pay for those ahead of time and then submit for reimbursement?
Yeah, so like Dakota does, and it just depends, right? So I would say it's a 50-50. Some of the banks are cool, like reimbursing you as you go. Some of them are just, hey, send me the bill and I'll pay it. And then some are, will pay you at the close of escrow. I know I've been nervous with Dakota before because you can carry a pretty hefty amount.
Mhm. This has been
I don't know if I
awesome.
answered
Thank you.
Yeah, all the above. Cool. Awesome.
This
Thank
is
you, guys. Tom, anything else before I know I'm starting to run a little late?
Well, Russ, you emulate what it takes to be successful. And I know a lot of people kind of look for the shiny objects. So I want to work REOs, but man, you're tracking, you're calling, you're following up, you're grinding, you're on the road, you're meeting. And I think that's really kind of characteristic in our world right now that, in fact, I saw a post on Instagram. It says, what peak performance is marketed as? Supplements, shiny objects, crazy diets, freezing baths and showers, obsessions at all costs, complex fine. But what peak performance actually looks like is hard work, grinding, follow up, frequent periods of boredom, simple, unglorious, unglamorous, and just showing up day in, day out. So Russell, you do that and your success is shown by that. So speaking of that, we're having dialing for dollars starting at 9:45 Pacific to make the calls, make the follow-ups, and keep things going. So Russell, thank you so much. Enjoy Hawaii. And thanks everyone. We'll see y'all soon.
Bye, guys.
Thanks guys. See ya. Bye now.